Shalom, shalom, shalom. This is Naaman with the Great Millstone Camp here in D.C. Back for another video. But first and foremost, call halal Yahweh, Ba'Hashem Yahushai, Ba'Hashem Rikar HaKodesh. And once again, double honors go out to the apostles, bishops, and elders of Great Millstone. All right. Well, salutations go out to fellow Akim that are out there on the highways and the byways. All right. Pushing the truth, of course, aided by the many videos that go out over the airwaves that are put out there for the edification for the hopeful elect. All right. That's what we're called to do. All right. And like I always say, we realize that a lot of you just view this as entertainment. You know, well, you're only hurting yourself at the end of the day. But in any case, here's the copyright disclaimer. Under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair uses are used permitted by copyright statutes that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use. All right? Fair use, fair use, fair use. All right, so here we go with the video. And this is going to go into, this is of course redacted. All right, the husband and wife team here. Talking about the U.S. government and its weather control. All right, so it looks like the so-called conspiracy theories, just like with about everything else that's been going on, have been proven right. All right, this goes back 60 years. Vietnam War, early parts, at least when they say the U.S. first got involved, even though we know it was earlier than that. But yeah, Lyndon Johnson, you know, made that speech. Talking about whoever controls the weather controls the world. All right, so, and this is what they've been doing, you know, manipulating shit to include the weather, all right?
Well, if you've been looking at the country of Iran over the past few years, you might have noticed some incredibly bizarre weather patterns. Rainfall totals plummeting by 77% in the year of 2025. All sorts of inextricably bizarre weather patterns that have been unfolding over that country over the past few years. Bizarre, intense weather over certain mountain ranges, but large drought as the people of that country have suffered not only under these weather patterns, but under sanctions. So what is actually going on here? Obviously, we've been focused on the geopolitics of all of this and missiles and politicians speaking. But at the heart of this, there's something something far more nefarious happening, which is weather manipulation, geoengineering on that country. Something that's not going to make the mainstream media headlines. You're certainly not going to see it on CNN or Fox News.
Oh, no,
but you will
can't
see it
have
here.
that.
And that's why we wanted to talk about it today. And we wanted to bring on the founder of geoengineeringwatch.org, that is Dane Wigington, to talk about Iran and the weather manipulation that could potentially be happening in that country. Dane, welcome back to the show. Great to see you.
Thank you for your addressing all the issues you addressed, Clayton and Natalie, and certainly you're completely correct on everything you just outlined. In fact, the weather warfare being waged against Iran goes back 40 years plus, at least, and that's been acknowledged on the record by their meteorologists and their former president, Ahmadinejad, emphatically on the floor of the UN, twice, I believe, stating that NATO was cutting off their precipitation. Is that not a form of all-out warfare
Yeah,
against
and
the
everybody
country,
thought he was crazy.
destabilizing their weather patterns, thus food production, thus destabilizing populations? How is that not warfare going on for decades in that country?
Now, we wouldn't have known this.
And you wonder why those people are acting the way they are. Actually, I think they show great refrain up until now, considering the shit that went on with Saddam Hussein, who was backed by the U.S. to get at them, the Iranians, all right, who were just gotten out of a years-long battle with, well, I'm thinking of Afghanistan, but see, in the situation with Israel steadily prodding and poking, people are tired. And then on top of that, what does the U.S. do here lately? In the midst of negotiations, they're attacked. This was last summer. So you wonder why now they're like, nah, we're in negotiation, nah, well, never mind. You wonder why they have that attitude now? But yeah, you're going to hear all this, and again, we're not backing Iran per se, but we're just pointing out who's really behind this shit. These wicked elites, and America has been the military arm of the elites.
Except for the last time that you were on, because this is not something that's widely discussed, but it is a tactic that the U.S. has employed in war going back at least to Vietnam. And now that is no longer a conspiracy. We actually did use cloud seeding to flood enemy trails in the Vietnam War. And you were on after a guest who debunked all of the crap about Iran and the nuclear weapons and trying to liberate their women. And you came on and said, I'd like to respond to that because we've been conducting weather warfare on them for decades. And Clayton and I were like, what? Wait, what? Right. So can you just give us a bit of this history, how we know it, what they've claimed, and what the technology is that we can use for it?
Climate engineering is more effective at diminishing and dispersing precipitation than even augmenting it. So you referred to Project Popeye in Vietnam. Yes. Again, historical record. The U.S. so successful at controlling precipitation over that country that in 1976, the international community passed the INMOD treaties, environmental modification treaties, forbidding weather warfare, but not forbidding a country from doing whatever it wants over its own citizens, i.e. us. We're being treated the same as the Iranians are. So who is really in charge of this whole operation? I mean, people think our government is somehow being benevolent to our citizens any more than they are the Iranians. That's not the truth. So again, this form of covert warfare has been used for decades, not just over Iran, but over many other countries. In fact, if we look at Africa, where the U.S. has AFRICOM and bases in everybody's backyard or on their border, those countries were also droughted out. And those governments behind closed doors forced to allow U.S. occupation. They don't do it willingly. So again, this is business as usual. And how many foreign bases do we have in the U.S., Clayton and Natalie?
Business as
Zero.
usual.
Zip nada. It's only our bases and everybody else's backyard and on their border.
Imperialism, colonialism.
You guys, I'm sure, saw what amounted to chemical warfare being conducted in Iran right now by them bombing the oil production facilities and creating incredibly toxic precipitation and cloud cover there. You guys both saw that, right?
Oh, absolutely. And, earlier in the week, we spoke to Professor Morandi, who's in Tehran, and he was describing just how catastrophic this was, where everything was covered in this oil. As you're walking down the street, he described, just putting your hand on a doorknob and you couldn't even open the door because your hand would slip off the doorknob. Everything was covered in this oil. Cars, he said, if you had a white car, it looked like your car turned into a zebra. Families with children at parks, covered in oil, everything, schools, everything is just covered in this toxic oil.
Think what that's doing to their human lungs. People are breathing this aerosolized oil, and this is business as usual also for the U.S. military. Let's go back to the nearly 700 oil wells that were torched in Kuwait and blamed on the Iraqi army. Guess who really did that? U.S. Special Forces have admitted to torching those wells. And we know they did it because 6 weeks prior, to that occurring, there was meetings already taking place in the U.S. between Halliburton, Bechtel, my former employer, that was already planning for that event to happen. So again, that was a global environmental cataclysm, those 700 wells. If you guys have ever seen pictures of that, it looked like something from a token film of Mordor. The whole sky is black, 700 wells torched by U.S. Special Forces to provide the premise for U.S. infrastructure to be moved in and take over. So again, this is business as usual.
And what did they say?
Now,
Saddam blew up his own wells. Lying sacks of shit. This is what they do, though.
When you see it this way, when you put this piece of the puzzle together, it makes sense why just last year Benjamin Netanyahu had that video for the Iranian people with a clean glass of water and saying, you too could have this if you submit to the will of Israel, overthrow your government. We will give you this too. That plays out like a scene from the Hunger Games. Like if you saw it in a movie, you would understand clearly the manipulation that's going on here. So the warfare is I'm asking this, is it inflict such severe pain in the living conditions of these people that they overthrow the government and we get to put in their new leader? Is that, you think, the tactic?
Of course. And it's truly sick and twisted. And when did Benjamin Netanyahu first claim that Iran was an immediate nuclear threat? 1992, 34 years ago. He started to make that claim. Obviously, it's complete smoke and mirrors, and just to provide a premise for doing exactly what they're doing now. What will it take for the American people to wake up? From Vietnam and the Gulf of Tonkin incident, which is a historical record now, was complete fabrication, to the fact that we knew back further, World War II, that we knew that bombing raid was coming to Hawaii. Again, this is just how the system works, and Americans don't want to know the truth. They just want to watch Fox News, for example, and feed from the matrix media trough of disinformation. But again, 34 years, 1992, that's a historical record. That's when Bibi Netanyahu first started to claim that Iran was an immediate nuclear threat, 34 years ago.
Can you talk about maybe some of what Israel and maybe the United States collaboration on this would look like from a weather manipulation standpoint, a geoengineering standpoint? Are we talking about aircraft? Are we talking about directed energy weapons from afar, from a distance, that would have created these climate patterns in Iran?
It's all the above. So, yeah, I didn't quite finish on that question earlier. Climate engineering, by two primary methods, can diminish and disperse precipitation or completely cut it off. In fact, that's exactly what's going on over the western U.S. right now. Complete cutoff of precipitation. We're under a massive high-pressure heat dome. That's an ionosphere heater-induced heat dome. And that comes from installations like HARP that can transmit, in the case of HARP, 3.6 million watts into the electrically charged ionosphere, causes an electrical chain reaction that superheats that portion of the atmosphere. And HARP is a directional antenna, so they can steer that in many different directions. And there's about 100 other ionosphere heaters of different designs around the world.
Ionospheric heater.
They can heat that area of the atmosphere, causes the atmosphere to expand up and down. Below that's a high-pressure heat dome. That causes the upper level wind currents and thus the moisture patterns to rotate clockwise around that heat dome. So right now we have, in the coming week, we're going to have record obliterating heat in the West. This is summertime heat wave. There's heat wave warnings being issued right now for the next week to 10 days in parts of the U.S. West. We've never seen anything this severe before. And that not in March. And we had 106 degrees in Texas in February, by the way. And so that moisture is rotated clockwise around that high pressure heat dome, and the moisture is chemically nucleated. So they're cooling off Alaska, they're cooling off part of the Arctic in an attempt to hide what's happening there. And all this chemical cool down makes the overall superheating of the planet worse, not better. And then that moisture is steered back down into the U.S., Clayton and Natalie. So they're cooling off the eastern U.S., the most populated portion of the U.S., and literally baking the western U.S. Think about that.
Well, we have a rather, we're supposed to be getting 80-degree temperatures over the past few days in Colorado. in
we
the
had a
mid
big
80s. It's unbunbelievable.
swing
we've
last
seen.
week here
And we
in
saw
DC and the
70
surrounding
degrees, and then the next day we got 10 inches
degrees.
of snow. People in their shorts and t-shirts. The next day,
Yeah.
10 inches of snow.
Just without the
Absolutely
snow,
crazy,
it
these
was
patterns
cold
that we've
as
been
shit.
seeing.
That's chemical ice nucleation, and that is 100% weather modification. And it's unfortunate that even some that claim to be in the fight to stop climate engineering are towing the exact narrative that the controllers and the climate engineers want when they engineer these chemical cool downs, that somehow that's some sign of global warming being a hoax or global cooling. No, it's 100% climate engineering that's creating that. And in fact, it is by that method of those chemical cool downs when they've created blizzards in New Orleans on January 21st of last year. You guys remember that probably, right?
Right. Right.
Blizzard New Orleans, blizzard Gulf Coast. And what didn't they tell us while it was snowing on the Gulf Coast? Oh, yeah, it was above freezing and raining throughout the Arctic, Alaska, Greenland, Iceland.
See? Extremes where you normally don't see them. Like he just mentioned, New Orleans, it was snowing. In the Arctic, it was above freezing. Yeah.
Siberia, above freezing and raining while it was a blizzard in New Orleans. So again, let's look here, don't look there. This covert weapon is the crown jewel weapon of the military-industrial complex. Again, not just with Iran. Iran's been a target for so very long, and it doesn't make the news. You're right. If it wasn't for voices like yours, Clayton, and yours, Natalie, nobody would hear about this. And I wonder why they don't like us very much over there when we've been doing this for decades to them. And for the record, Iran hasn't invaded anybody else for 250 plus years. In the last 100 years, the U.S. military has invaded, destabilized, and or occupied about 100 countries. Who's the aggressor in this equation?
Right.
Right. And so, given that we did not listen to these warnings from world leaders in the last 2 decades, now it stands to reason that that pressure could be placed on us. And what do you think is the political advantage of making us in the United States suffer in the same way?
Well, again, those in power clearly don't care any more about Americans than they do the Iranians or the Palestinians or anybody else. We're very expendable. If you look at presentations I did going back well over a decade, engineered drought catastrophe target California. Every bit of data I presented in that presentation, again, well over a decade ago, is more relevant today than ever before. If we look at scenarios like the Palisades wildfire or the Lahaina wildfire, those events are absolutely inseparable from climate intervention operations. We have a U.S. military document titled Forest Fires as a Military Weapon, and we've posted at geoengineeringwatch.org, and 140-page U.S. military document outlining exactly the kind of sometimes years-long preparation of a region to burn with maximum ferocity. And that's cutting off the precipitation. The fallout from climate intervention operations is an incendiary. Aluminum nanoparticles are an extremely powerful incendiary. It's used in military demolitions. So we have forest foliage, forest floors covered with this incendiary. They're setting the stage for maximum incineration. And we know that's the case in these events. Source of ignition is a separate subject completely. And in that document, and this is most damning, some 17 locations in the U.S. were named as study zones for these operations, including LA, including Shasta County, where I live. So again, why would our military study sites within our own borders for these types of operations? And what will it take to wake the American people up to the fact that they are not just expendable, but a rapidly increasing liability to those in power? When we have Zbigniew Brzezinski, former presidential advisor, going all the way back to President Johnson, Brzezinski died in 2017, thankfully. But we have him sitting on the record, and your listeners can look this up, that with today's technology, it's far easier to...
These are some arrogant, prideful, mischievous, hateful people that rule over us. Covetous. And there's a warning about that in the scriptures. All right, Habakkuk 2nd chapter. But let's start here in Sirach 10. It says, because of unrighteous dealings, injuries, and riches got by deceit, the kingdom is translated from one people to another. Why is earth and ashes proud? There is not a more wicked thing than a covetous man. He wants it all. He wants his. He wants what's yours. And he's going to do anything in order to try to get it. All right? Micah 2nd chapter goes into that. He says, for such an one setteth his own soul to sale, because while he liveth, he casteth away his bowels. If you notice, they really go after countries that have it set up to where they take care of their own people. They have those programs, locked in to where, people are better off. It's not all this, you better get yours before I get mine. They try to take care of everybody. And meanwhile, over here, we were sold this shit about, you just work hard and you'll get it. And that's not the case, because what's come to the forefront now, these devils trick Moab into coming after us in affirmative action. DEI is a dirty word. So everything that our people fought for, and by the way, the other people that came over, they enjoyed it. All right. But why didn't nobody say anything about those legacy admissions in these colleges? I'm just sticking with the colleges for now. Motherfuckers dumb as a box of rocks. But because their name might even be on a building. All right. So you know why they got in. But they didn't work their ass off like that person, that minority that otherwise didn't get a free ride. But they deserve to be there because they busted their ass to get there. So you want to sweep everything under the rug as far as our people's accomplishments, and now the whole world is really done with you. I'm talking about specifically America and Israel. Edom as a whole, but specifically, we're talking about these two. Because that coalition looks mighty, mighty weak now. When I'm talking about, we're making reference to Daniel's 2nd chapter about the 10 toes. As it says in Obadiah, verse 7 there, those people that were confederate with you, they've now laid a snare for you. I'm paraphrasing. No, that's what's happening now. That's the phase that we're in now. All right? See, these people over in Iran, all right, like he was saying, they've been fucking with these people with the weather for 40 years now, at least. All right, all this poking the bear, for lack of another description. This is what they do, hoping to provoke you into some action. And you got to give Iran the credit, because they've been extremely patient. All right. But then again, that's the area over there where chess was invented, if my memory serves. China too, Moab, they're playing the long game. They're good at that. So now this person that's our president, all right, because whatever they got on this guy and others, all right, your so-called leaders, all right, now he's got into something that I know for sure now he wishes he didn't. But he's being manipulated. All right, so this thing literally, because Iran is saying, no, we're not going back to the negotiation table. You got us last June. We come to the table the whole time. You were plotting to bomb the shit out of us, which you did. But to no avail, because we had already hidden our shit anyway. The good stuff anyway. So see, this devil's gone. He thinks he's on par with the Most High. Let me get this. But he's going to be reminded once I get this, what I'm thinking of here. This is Ezekiel 28. I'm going to start at 1. Prophecy against the Prince of Tyre. And I believe the actual ruler at that time was Ith-Baal the third. It says, Ezekiel 28:1, it says, the word of the Most High came again unto me, saying, Son of man, say unto the prince of Tyrus, thus saith the Most High, because thine heart is lifted up, and thou hast said, I am a God. Yeah, you got the hubris of these motherfuckers. It just, they walk up and down the street, you see them. We're just talking about the common everyday Edomite, the self-professed white man. How much more these elites, all right? And thou hast said, I am a God, and I sit in the seat of God in the midst of the seas. Yet thou art a man and not God, though thou set thine heart as the heart of God. Isaiah 14 chapter, from 6 on down, all right? 2 Thessalonians 2nd chapter, which we're in now. He's the man of sin being revealed. All right, the son of perdition. 3, behold, thou art wiser than Daniel. There is no secret that they can hide from thee. I don't think of his technology. All right, it's been allowed, again, Daniel. All right. 4, with thy wisdom and with thine understanding thou hast gotten in thee riches, and has gotten gold and silver into thy treasures. But how did he do it? By thy great wisdom and by thy traffic hast thou increased thy riches, and thine heart is lifted up because of thy riches. 6, therefore thus saith the Most High, whose name is Yahweh, because thou hast set thine heart as the heart of the Most High, behold, therefore I will bring strangers upon thee, the terrible of the nations, and they shall draw their swords against the beauty of thy wisdom, and they shall defile thy brightness. See, this is one thing they still haven't come to grips with. What you have done to those that the Most High considers the apple of his eye, much worse is going to be done to you. All right? It says, 8, they shall bring thee down to the pit. Again, echoing Isaiah 14 chapter. And thou shalt die the deaths of them that are slain in the midst of the seas. Wilt thou yet say before him that slayeth thee, I am God? But thou shalt be a man and no God in the hand of him that slayeth thee. So he's going to be brought down again. Obadiah, all right? Edom will be humbled. And we're in the midst of him being humbled. All right. The vision of Obadiah, thus saith the Most High, and concerning Edom, we have heard a rumor from the Most High, and an ambassador is sent among the heathen. Arise ye, and let us rise up against her in battle. Behold, I have made thee small among the heathen. Thou art greatly despised. Is he not? The pride of thine heart hath deceived thee, thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rock, whose habitation is high. All you have to do is look at the architecture round about you. What do you see? Everything reminds you of Mount Seir. All right, so it's who we're talking about, Petra. All right. All right, look at this. See? Let's see. Let's see if they don't have the pictures I'm looking for. Hold on. Let's see, images. Here we go. architecture still reminds you of this. Look at this. Site of ancient Edom. Especially here in D.C., this is how in a lot of your major cities, your government buildings, especially your city halls and things, this is how they're still constructed. This is thousands of years. It's in their spirit. They can't help it. Look at your ordinary building. It looks like caves, like honeycomb of caves. Look at this. This is letting you know who you're dealing with. All right. People look past that, or they'll make their excuse. They'll say, oh no, those were, they say the Nabateans did come after them. And those are your Ishmaelites. All right. Again, look at this. I am against thee, Mount Seir, which is what the Most High is saying. All right. Look at this. Who is that? Ezekiel 35, I am against thee, O Mount Seir. All right. Yeah. They can't get away from it. They're hoping, it's amazing because all the books and everything, see, there's a clearer picture of it, although small. Look at that, with the eagle on the top. Another clue, Mount Seir, Edomites. Esau structures. And they're trying to say that you heard after that October thing, October 7th, like 2.5 years ago now, Netanyahu tried to say that the Ishmaelites were the Edomites. No, they are Netanyahu and his people. All right, here's a book, the people of Mount Seir. All right, now that looks more like an Ishmaelite. You got to be careful here. All right, because there's a lot of deception going on. They've been trying so hard, all right, to stay hid. All right. No, these are the people that the Most High hates. All right, it tells you that. All right. So let's go back. Well, let's see if I was done with scripture first. Hold on. Let's see. The pride of thine heart hath deceived thee, thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rock. Another clue. What did I just show you? Whose habitation is high, that saith in his heart, who shall bring me down to the ground? The most prideful people on this earth, as you can see. All right. Are Edom, the self-professed white people. And add to that the American exceptionalism, to his own, can't even stand them. What's the scripture say in Daniel about, let's see if I can get that real quick, and I come back to this, see verse 4. Let's see. Is it 8 or is it 7? Hold on. Let's see. Yeah, it is 7 and 20. And of the 10 horns that were in his head, and of the other which came up, and before whom 3 fell, even of that horn that had eyes, and a mouth that spake very great things, whose look was more stout than his fellows. All right, that's why his fellow Edomites can't stand him. All right, Americans, Let's see, verse 4. Though thou exalt thyself as the eagle, another clue, and though thou set thy nest among the stars, another one. Think of his space program. Thence will I bring thee down, saith the Most High. All right, and you go to Amos, because he is, with his bunkers, with his underground, his DUMBs, deep underground military bases, and his stations that are set up in Leo, low Earth orbit. All right, it says, thence will I bring thee down. All right, let's see. If thieves came to thee, if robbers by night, how art thou cut off? would they not have stolen till they had enough? If the grape gatherers came to thee, would they not leave some grapes? And this is another characteristic of these devils, because, again, they want it all. They're not going to leave you shit, but this is alluding to what Israel used to do in the vineyards. They would leave something there for the unfortunate, your own welfare system, so to speak. But no, this motherfucker will burn it all up. And there was it brings to mind a farmer in California, but I think this was back in the 80s. His surplus, he would, try to just give it away. But he got fined so much by the government. These 6. How are the things of Esau searched out? How are his hidden things sought up? Here's my point in 7. All the men of thy confederacy have brought thee even to the border. The men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee and prevailed against thee. Well, I wonder why. Surely it couldn't been something that you've done, right? Like spying on your and all kinds of shit. They that eat thy bread have laid a wound unto thee. There is none understanding in him. All right, 8. Shall I not in that day, saith the Most High, even destroy the wise men out of Edom, and understanding out of the mount of Esau? Everything's falling apart for these people. This is them being brought down. Everybody's seeing through their bullshit now. All right. 9. And thy mighty men, O Teman, shall be dismayed, to the end that every one of the mount of Esau may be cut off by slaughter. This is what's coming. This is his ultimate end in 18, verse 18. But it tells you why in the next scriptures. Edom's violence against Jacob. Duh. It tells you why this is happening to him. All the shit he's done. This is what he was created. He was created to be the wicked. There is no hope of repentance for Edom. Tells you in the Bible dictionary. All right, and it tells you in Hebrews 12th chapter, verses 16 and 17. So that blows that Christianity shit. That in and of itself tells you everybody can't be saved. All right, let's go back to the video.
Kill 1 million people than to control them, quote unquote, verbatim. So again, Americans need to wake the hell up.
Right. This is all about population control, 100%. These people are demonic. They are Satanists. They absolutely don't care about humanity at all. When you look at maybe some of the recent atmospheric events tied to Iran specifically and this war, maybe preceding what we saw, and now, of course, there's discussions about ground operations and other things, like the idea of like softening a target and preparing it for strikes, ground operations, and otherwise. What do you see? Does anything stand out specifically?
Well, certainly look at the case with Tehran. So they were out of water. Literally, they were discussing evacuating a city of 10 million people because there's no water. And this is important to consider as well, because to call out climate intervention operations is not to deny all other sources of damage to the planet. We've been horrible stewards of planet Earth. And those who are environmentally minded think if you mention climate engineering, you must be denying everything else. That's not the case, not with geoengineeringwatch.org. We acknowledge that. But our point at geoengineeringwatch.org is, how do you have any legitimate discussion about climate, anything from any perspective, without addressing climate engineering first and foremost? So on a rapidly warming planet, and it appears by unfiltered frontline data, we're somewhere in the neighborhood of 3.5 degrees C over pre-industrial baselines, not 1.5. We're being lied to on that front as well. It's far worse than anything we're being told. But it must rain more on a rapidly warming planet. The atmosphere holds 7% more moisture for every degree C of warming. You have to have more overall rain. If you don't, there's a factor we're not being told about, and that factor is climate engineering. So again, it's like where I live in Northern California. I moved here specifically because, based on the best science data at the time, the IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, largest scientific panel ever created on any subject in human history, where I live, in the bullseye of where I live, should have been the greatest increase in precipitation based on that protracted warming. And it started that way until 05, 06, We had 105 inches of rain where I live. That's a lot. And then they cut it off. They started altering the patterns, high pressure doming the U.S. West, which diverted all the rain completely around us and dropped it further inland in the eastern half of the U.S., where the largest, most dense populations are, chemically cooling them. And in fact, since 2012, the eastern half of the U.S. lower 48 is the most anomalously less warm region in the entire world. That's not nature. That's climate engineering. They're pacifying the U.S. populations, confusing them and dividing them as to the true damage done to the climate, while paradoxically inflicting even more damage. And again, we have the meteorological community, cowards that they are, absolute cowards, denying these operations, just like the medical community claiming safe and effective concoctions are safe and effective when they're anything but.
Well, it also just infuriates me about how useful the narrative is that my single-use coffee cup is destroying the planet, that it's my habits, that it's my long showers that is changing the environment, when it seems to be broad strokes by globalists instead. Like the blaming of people so that they notice who's doing what. What do you think about that?
Well, again, there's many things they do to polarize populations. For example, cow flatulence. Cow flatulence blamed for the methane buildup in the atmosphere. And that's a complete smoke and mirrors, polarize the populations, and keep their eye off the ball. So cutting down forests to raise cattle, yeah, that's definitely a problem. When they're cutting down the Amazon to raise food for livestock, that's a problem. But as far as methane, for example, the methane blowouts are the biggest problem by far, and nobody's talking about that, which climate engineering in the attempt to hide that is making it worse, not better. So if your listeners searched, for example, Siberian methane craters, and look at those images, you have to see the images to believe them. It looks like someone's been dropping nuclear bombs in the Arctic tundra. There's craters several hundred feet wide, several hundred feet deep. That's methane literally exploding into the atmosphere because those methane hydrate and clathrate fields are thawing and releasing. And Clayton and Natalie, if we go back, you guys know the Bermuda Triangle scenario, right? Ships sink intact.
Right.
Everybody knows that, right? That's methane blowouts from the sea floor. It's been happening for decades, and those in power know this. They know what's behind this. And by the way, the greatest single source polluter on planet Earth, U.S. military.
Well, yes.
Greatest single source polluter. Period.
Yes.
I mean, you've seen these memes, Dane, over the past few days as the war has unfolded over the past few weeks, where people are, saying, oh, I have to use this soggy glue-made paper straw while the United States is bombing Iran and causing mass devastation and climate catastrophe.
It is. And especially, again, the example of the 700 wells in Kuwait, I mean, that as a single event was beyond cataclysmic for the planet. So again, Americans, while they're blindly waving their flags, pretending 9/11 was what we're told, pretending Vietnam was what we're told and why that happened, and back to Pearl Harbor and so many other events, again, it's time to open the eyes. Too many Americans have their eyes wide shut, and that's why we're in this mess.
Eyes wide shut.
And patriotism
Stupid
isn't
Americans.
blind obedience to the empire.
And this is what you will hear if you go abroad. For those that will, and hey, you're over there, they don't mind telling you. Stupid Americans. All right. So this as far as I'm gonna go. It says 52 minutes. Let's see, maybe 5 more minutes.
In fact, what did Mark Twain say, quote unquote, from Mr. Twain? In the beginning of change, the patriot, and he meant the true patriot, is brave and scarce, hated and scorned. But in the end, when his cause succeeds, the timid join him, for then it costs nothing to be a patriot.
Well, yeah, you can say that about the prophet. Exactly. You know about the prophet. You get so many cheerleaders out there, Why? Because finally, when everybody sees that the prophet was right, now everybody wants to join in. But like he just said, at that point, it doesn't cost them anything. But it was the prophet out there getting shit thrown at him, getting cussed at, getting lied on, whatever have you. So that's exactly that Mark Twain quote could be applied to the prophet. All right, let's hear that again.
Quote unquote, from Mr. Twain, in the beginning of change, the patriot, and he meant the true patriot, is brave and scarce, hated and scorned. But in the end, when his cause succeeds, the timid join him, for then it costs nothing to be a patriot.
So there you go. At that point, it costs nothing for the timid at that point. Because the real danger is past by that point. You know, I got to write that down or look it up and copy it. You know?
So again, it's been like this for a very, very long time. And now more than ever, Americans just want to be lied to. Too many Americans want to be lied to, want to be told we're good, they're bad, and they want to think so simplistically. Bottom line is the whole ship is going down right now, and that's directly tied to the naked aggression happening in the Middle East. The planet's life support systems are imploding right now. In the coming weeks and months, we are going to see astounding headlines. It's already happening. So, again, as I've stated at geoengineeringwatch.org for a decade and a half, as biosphere collapse beats the controllers to the intersection, they will play very big cards. False flags, pathogen release, and global conflict.
Something else we've been telling you for the
controllers at any point of their choosing? We know we have polymer fibers and graphene in our precipitation. We know that from hundreds of lab tests, some of those working with the University of Minnesota. Those two elements are biological carrier platforms, meaning militarily for biological warfare. They're used to carry a pathogen from the clouds to the ground. Mm-hmm. And what's to stop those in power when they feel they're truly losing control from seeding something like Marburg and Ebola?
Yes.
And leveling the playing field. And there are some in the alt media community, and I've had these run-ins with them, who claimed, and we discussed one of those names before we got on air here, Clayton.
It's like, for the idiots out there, have not the wicked elite at this point proven, all right, that they will do anything to accomplish their goal? Do you not see that? Surprisingly, you still got a few out there that believe in the righteousness of good old America. And like he said earlier, and like we've been saying, you better, you know, for those of you on the fence, Sirach 5 and verses 4 through 7, all right? Keep playing around. Keep playing the fuck around. Thinking this shit is going to bounce back.
Natalie, individuals who have denied that elements like Marburg and Ebola can be aerosolized and weaponized.
Mm-hmm.
That is absolutely the case. They can be, even though some deny that, even those, again, claiming to be disclosing truth. And also the same source denied that the U.S. military would ever conduct such an operation because it's illegal. They wouldn't do that, right? What a farce that is. Of course they would. Of course they have. And we know from sources like the Washington Post as far back as 1977, there were no less than 239 open-air biological tests conducted on innocent U.S. civilians, unknowing civilians by the U.S. military. 239 as of 1977. How many have been conducted since?
Well, even anthrax. I mean, you spoke to Dr. Meryl Naz. She came to one of your events. She, of course, testified before Congress about the anthrax attacks, the vaccines that are given to our troops, these anthrax vaccines that are shoved into our troops. Absolutely horrible stuff. But she spoke about the aerosolization of anthrax. Most people think that it just falls down, binds to dust on the ground, and then it's done. It's kind of inert. But we saw with those anthrax letter attacks that it was a highly militarized, weaponized version of anthrax that you couldn't just make off the shelf. It had to be made by the U.S. military, essentially, whether Fort Detrick or otherwise, or out of this country at another, biolab base that we don't even know about, whether in Iraq or Ukraine. And then it's aerosolized where it actually causes the most damage, where we can breathe it in.
Of course they're doing this. What do people think that hundreds of biolabs all over the globe are up to? Something benevolent for the common good? making something safe and effective? How about lower level pathogens like mycoplasma, which is epidemic now? And I saw once when I was on a remote mountain.
Yeah, I'm going to cut it up there. The point being, this devil is going to do any and everything he can, all right, to try to stay on top. And if you don't believe that, you're just an idiot, all right? And like the saying goes, you're going to stand for something or you're going to fall for anything, all right? And what have, to this point, most of America's, what have they done? They've fallen for everything. To the point now where it's really too late for you to really take any effective action, because AIPAC, all right, that Jewish lobby, they've got their claws so deep in this place. It's over. It's over. This place is done. Right now they're starting up. They did it very sneakily with the selective service. You don't have to sign anything now. You don't have to fill out a registration card. You're automatically, all right, registered now. And I think it takes effect in December, if I'm not mistaken. And this is both male and female, if I'm not mistaken. So it's no more, well, I forgot to sign. No, they've already signed. Yeah. So, this place is out of here. It's going to get really, oh, and I almost failed to mention. I got to get the video. It's midway through a long video. I got to find it. Where they're talking about, they got caught. This is Pete Hegseth, Secretary of Defense, asshole, and someone else. They were asked a question, and what they're doing, they're not only taking DNA from people in these ICE protests that they snatch up, even the protesters, not necessarily we know what they're going to do with the people that they snatch up, but I'm talking about the protesters. They're taking DNA samples from them, and what they're also doing, they have it to where they're going to come down on the protesters. That's using the National Guard, and this is something they really didn't want leaked out. So you're probably going to get these weapons that, some people know that they have, and probably some things that you've never seen before, directed at the American people. This is what's coming here shortly. So when it really gets warm out here, hey, be careful where you are at. I would not advise you to be where there are protests. This would be a good time to pay attention to the news and where there are gatherings, so you can go the opposite direction. Just saying. All right. Anyway, so with that, once again, I hope whoever views this video has been edified. That's what we do here at Great Millstone. And dangerous times that we're coming into. All right. So more than ever, be circumspect out here. Keep your eyes and ears open. All right. So with that, until the next video, hey, shalom.